Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Chasing Clarity Health and Fitness Podcast. I am your host, Jeff Black, returning to the chair along with my co-host, Brandon DeCruz. Today it is episode 108, The Pros of Semaglutide and GLP-1 with Jason Theobald, one of Brandon and mine's really close friends joining us today. So it's been a little bit since I've been on here. Brandon was gracious enough. So everybody listening, be sure to give him all the nude photos you can, all the love you can on Instagram for holding the podcast down for me he's blushing right now for the last few months so I could get the book done and get ATG up and try some stuff that Scoob and I wanted to work on and just allow me to kind of be selfish for a little bit. I needed a little break and he was very generous and gave that to me. So I thank him from the bottom of my heart, and you all should too, because he kept this thing going. But Daddy's back and we are going to kick this off today. So real quick, we're just going to kind of do like a quick 60-second roundup. So for each of us, so those of you who'd like to skip forward past this about how we've been doing the last little bit, go ahead and go about 3 minutes forward and you'll get to the next point. With that being said, Brandon, how's your last like little bit been real quick?
Man, everything has been going well on my end. We're already in the spring. Weather is starting to warm up. Thank God, up here in the Northeast, business is booming. It's been very busy season for me on my end, and then I'm getting into the latter half of a building phase essentially. So I've been pushing. I mean, I'm eating a lot of food right now, like 4,600 calories per day. My carbs are over 800 right now.
Patty,
So I've been really slamming the food to say the least. But
you're
I'm
disgusting.
going to be doing this probably for another 7 to 8 weeks. I got on a call with Joe recently, and then we're going to go into a photo shoot prep. It's been a couple years since I've actually pushed myself really hard. I get lean every year. I'll do like a mini cut or something, but I want to get in photo shoot shape for August. I have a couple of photographers that I've worked with over the years. I mean, I've been fitness modeling for about 14 years at this point, and I have a few that are traveling up to the Northeast for the first time since COVID. So it's been 4 or 5 years since they've actually been in New York and New Jersey. So I'm looking forward to linking up with them and getting some good shoots in the way. So other than that, man, everything is good on my end, and I'll turn it over to you, my friend.
Oh, dude, things couldn't be better. I'm looking to expand Iron House sometime next year. I went back to a rent-based model, did away with my online coaching team, just kind of doing my own stuff, working with a guy who helped bring Goggins' book to life starting May 1st. So we're going to be formally attacking Brittle to Unbreakable to really kind of get that out there to the masses and working on stuff. But in all honesty, dude, I'm 14 months. Well, no, 16 months post when they told me I needed all those surgeries. And I like to say that today was the first day I squatted underneath the bar in over 18 months. No
Hell
weight,
yeah.
but just working on sets of 10 to kind of get myself back to used to getting load. And if all goes well, I anticipate to compete next year. And I really owe a shout out to my significant other who convinced me not to retire. She said, don't post that on social media. You'll regret it. I never did. And I took my little break and I'm looking forward to getting back on the stage. So Jason's gonna get another shot here going into what? This could be like our like damn, it'll be like our 12th, 13th year next time. So it's like our
Yeah.
20th show together. So
That's like the longest relationship either one of you
yeah,
guys have had.
I think
Dear
so.
Lord.
I think him and I are there now, officially. But it's been really good, man. And Jay, how's things been in your world the last little bit over there in Scooby Healthland?
It's been a mixed bag.
Yeah.
So I went to Scottsdale with my team. That was an amazing, amazing high. Every one of the coaches attended. We just did a lot of team bonding. We did the Enneagrams where you kind of learn like a little bit more about your personality. That really helped us all kind of gel and kind of see how to work with each other. And then we did a crazy, crazy hike. We didn't do any research on it. It ended up being like one of the hardest hikes in like, I don't know, the whole freaking state. And I guess helicopters have to take people off this mountain freaking daily. My elbow still hurts. I had that broken elbow from falling back in the day, and it was finally feeling good. Now it's fucking lit up. I can barely press. I had people on my team, twisting ankles, whatever. We all made it. We all got down, but damn, was it way more than I wanted to do. I thought I was going to traipse through the woods, just kind of walking, smoking some weed and talking to people, and it was not that. But then I got home and, I don't put much out on social media about my personal life, but my dad passed on Tuesday. I luckily at least got to say my goodbyes on Monday. He was incapacitated, but still, I got to do that. So it was a real high, and then probably one of the lowest lows. So That's
Yeah, I'm so sorry to hear that, my man. I just want to
yeah,
express
man.
that. I know that you and I have privately had conversations because our parents were in a very similar place, but I'm extremely sad to hear that.
I appreciate it. It's not been real easy, but life goes on, man. It's back to working, and I had a client come in this weekend. It was probably a good thing. We all went out to dinner, went to a comedy club, laughed our asses off, and just had a decent time. And I'm still processing, but otherwise, this weekend I've got AVH, the whole team coming in for like the same type of thing, but they're coming to Cincinnati. We're taking them out to dinner, going to do a little learning, really trying to form where we want the company to go next as it's growing rapidly and doing really well. Scooby Health is killing it, and I love my team. I love my coaches. I love everything about it. So as far as business goes, I'm in a great spot. Just working through some things, on the personal side and what it all means for me. But that's kind of how my last 7 days have been, just from an honest perspective. So
Yeah, Jay, man, I'm sorry for your loss, but we chatted that day when you were driving over.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
but all right, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. First off, if you guys like what we're about to talk about, be sure to share it. Be sure to help us get the word out there. We're looking to grow. With that being said, coaches, I want you all to try to test your mettle. I have a few spots that I'm looking to fill for the seminar that Brandon, Jason, and a group of us do here in Nashville, Tennessee. It will benefit Dr. Martis's research fund for my brittle bone disease for the children who suffer from osteogenesis imperfecta here in Vanderbilt. It was so cool. We got to be the initial first round of money that Dr. Martis has ever directly received to start beginning to kind of do stuff with. So that
Oh
was,
shit.
it puts him on the map, and that way he'll now be seen in the Vanderbilt regular directory for donations and so forth. But
About time, huh?
yeah, so I'm looking for, and so is Jay, and so is B, is coaches who want to present on Friday. It's all for charity, so you come in on your own dime. We provide hotels. The gym's free. If you buy a ticket, the gym's free. A lot of people don't know that, but we're gonna hold it off site this year. And then that way allow for a little bit more space, make it a little bit more nuanced. But submit any ideas you have to my social media directly. Jeff Unbreakable Black on Instagram. Just message me there. I'll see it, strike up a conversation at some point. I hope I get a few, but we really like you guys to come join us, help share and educate other coaches because the work we do is really good. And the other thing is Brandon said Joe Jeffrey, and I'm not going to say nothing, but it might be that Joe Jeffrey and the Physique Collective are coming to Nashville, Tennessee in October. Then I'm bringing the English over here to the United States. So that will be announced soon. Joe and I are in the final stages of getting that hammered down, but we're looking for maybe 2 to 3 days to really be able to enjoy it because, he doesn't come stateside often. So more details to come. Hope you guys support that we do here at Iron House and the stuff we do with the podcast like ATG and all that.
I mean, if you're a coach out there and you want to get into speaking, like I wish something like this existed. And
Agreed.
so, Jeff and I just decided to make our own shit and do it. But, whether you think you're ready or not, if you got something to say, submit. I would submit.
Yep, 100%. Wise words, my friend. So now it's probably like 5 minutes and 47 seconds past the point of probably which we should have stopped talking. But we are going to get into the pros of semaglutide and GLP-1 with Jace Theobald. So Jason, myself, and Vince, we did a podcast about this a couple of weeks ago. It's going to be a different one. So I'm really glad when I approached Brandon about this because I know Brandon will give a different view to it than what Jason and I have already covered. And Jason deals with this stuff every day. And this is one of those topics that it's the rage right now. Everybody talks about. They were showing that Planet Fitness there for the first time, or I guess their business's history, that they flatlined Q1, and they think it's because of Ozempic. No reason to go get a gym membership if you're losing weight and not having to change a damn thing. So it's very interesting when you get into it. So we wanted to have a conversation about the pros of it because you often hear the wrong way that it's being used, and that's what causing a lot of the problems.
I think we do still have to talk about the negatives too, because I'm not going to say, yeah, there's not
100%.
there are 100% negatives to this drug, and it has to be done right. So
agreed.
Want to put that out there.
And I'm glad the three of us can actually have an intelligent conversation on it, hopefully, and make it where coaches are going to walk away, and even the average listener or Gen Pop person will just be like, feel more comfortable about knowing more about this drug than the 60-second shorts they see on TikTok and YouTube and Instagram. So let's get into the topic of semaglutide, the physiology of GLP-1s, and B, how does endogenous GLP-1 work for those who are curious about this?
Yeah, so just to give a little bit of background, you did a great job introducing this, but essentially on this week's episode, we really wanted to bring Jason on to discuss the topic of GLP-1 receptor agonists, which are a drug that bind to the receptor of that work on the same receptor as our natural endogenous production of GLP-1. And this, these are drugs that you'll hear go by their trade names, which could be like Ozempic, which is actually for diabetes, or Wegovy, which is used for weight loss. And the thing is that we can't get away from these drugs. So not covering them on the podcast. We actually did a podcast a very long time ago on the cons of GLP-1 receptor agonists. We're going to also cover both sides of the topic on today's podcast. But really, when it comes down to it, these drugs are becoming more and more popular. And all three of us as coaches are encountering clients that are either interested in taking this drug, they're coming to us on the drug already, or they're trying to transition off the drug.
Right.
So to start this out, I'm going to go through some of the physiology of GLP-1, as this is actually an endogenously produced hormone in the body. And then I'm going to turn it over to Jay so that he can speak on how these GLP-1 receptor agonists, which are the pharmaceutical versions, how they work exogenously. So just to give you guys a little primer behind this, glucagon-like peptide 1 is a gut-derived peptide hormone that is part of a family of hormones called incretins. And the best way to understand what that means is incretin essentially means it increases insulin secretion. So these work on increasing insulin production essentially. So when we eat a meal, GLP-1 is naturally released in response to the ingestion of those nutrients, primarily by our small intestines. But we also have natural production that comes both from our pancreas and from our brain. And so our natural GLP-1 elicits several effects on the body, which we're going to see as we go through the drug, but this works naturally as well, and it has several downstream effects. So it's going to impact especially two different areas, which is our blood sugar control and insulin sensitivity, and then our appetite. So GLP-1 increases insulin secretion from the pancreas, which lowers blood sugar levels. It also acts in the fact that it slows down gastric emptying rate, which is going to essentially slow down digestion, and it's going to allow for nutrients to be absorbed slower and pass through slower. So essentially what that means is it's going to help us feel fuller and have lower post-meal blood sugar spikes. Then it also decreases glucagon secretion, which is in and of itself going to lower glucose levels, because if you look at like the physiology of glucagon, what that does is it breaks down glycogen from both liver and muscle tissue, which if glucagon's high, it's actually going to increase blood sugar levels. And then the last effect that it essentially has is more of a brain, essentially mediated effect. And glucagon-like peptide 1 can bind to receptors in the brain or in the hypothalamus of the brain, and it can help with feelings of satiety and fullness to suppress our appetite. So that's how I just want to give everyone a little bit of an idea. We have this naturally occurring in the body. So this is not something that you guys, many times we're only talking about the drug, and this drug has only come into really popularity since 2017. But this is something that we can actually endogenously produce. We can naturally increase our production of. Today, we're really going to focus on, exogenous GLP-1 drugs, but we're also going to go through, there are some listener questions, including how to naturally increase GLP-1, which we'll cover later. So, Jay, I'm going to turn this over to you, and I just want you to explain to the audience how GLP-1 receptors work when individuals take a peptide like semaglutide.
So, I think you already did a pretty decent job of covering a lot of what happens. When you take semaglutide, you're going to have basically a release of insulin. And a lot of these people who are taking these drugs don't have a proper response to food anymore. So insulin is not secreting. So these drugs basically cause the body, as you eat, to push out insulin, which in turn is then going to clear out the blood sugar that is circulating. As insulin is released, that will bring glucagon down, which I think Brandon touched on. And a lot of times in these people, I'm finding that they have high cortisol, and when cortisol is high, glucagon is raging. And so you constantly have this dumping. So by using these drugs, you're helping clear out a lot of this problem, which is then going to bring down inflammation and help the body and the metabolic processes start to work a lot better. So, it's not something that I recommend for every person. There are certain people that are really, really going to benefit from this. and I look at blood glucose. I look at different things in terms of weight loss resistance to decide who is the best candidate for this. But, you know, I even look at GI maps too. If you don't have enough Akkermansia will help stimulate a P9 protein, and that helps stimulate GLP-1s as well. So I take a kind of a full gamut here when I'm deciding if someone needs to, use this drug. So I think we can just start there, and then whatever you want to add on. I'll be honest with you. I know everything you just stated, Brandon, and then everything I just stated. To me, if you're a practitioner, that's what you need to know. Then it's like, how do we use these drugs? That's where I shine. As far as the research, that's all you, my man. So if there's anything else research you want to add, I'm more of in the fields using them. I can tell you how I use it, when I use it, why I use it, how I reverse someone off of it. But to get more into the weeds, that's where I'm like, here's what they do, here's how they work. And that's about as much as I offer on that side. So if there's any more research you want to discuss, I'll turn it back to you on that side.
Absolutely. No, you did an incredible job introducing essentially what these drugs do. And essentially what you guys have to realize is we're using an exogenous hormone, and what glucagon-like GLP-1 receptor agonists do essentially is they're going to dock to the same receptor. They're going to bind to the GLP-1 receptor in the brain, in the gut, and they're going to have physiological effects. So we do endogenously or naturally produce GLP-1, but not at the same concentrations that we would if we were taking an injectable like semaglutide. Like Jason mentioned, there are certain individuals. So say for instance, the first candidate of individuals or first group of individuals that these drugs were made for, it was through the trade name Ozempic, and it was for type 2 diabetics who are suffering from insulin resistance. And this is because GLP-1 drugs do increase that insulin secretion. But sometimes people think they're like, no, isn't that the opposite of what we want? No, we want insulin to come up and we want it to clear out blood glucose from the bloodstream. And so it really helps with the remission of type 2 diabetes, because when you are insulin resistant, your beta cells of the pancreas do not function as well as they should. So this is helping with beta cell function. This is helping with proper insulin secretion, clearing of blood glucose, making sure that you are not in a state of hyperglycemia where your blood sugar levels are elevated chronically over time. And so there's many effects and many benefits that we can go through. And then what we're really seeing a lot of people, so those are like more of the metabolic health issues. We're seeing initially this was made for type 2 diabetics. Now, what we could do is we can open up and talk about some of the other effects or some of the other benefits and uses that we're seeing. Because I'll tell you personally, I have individuals that are coming to me that are using it for weight loss, or they were in a high BMI category. So if you actually look at the categorizations of who can use GLP-1 drugs, I believe you have to be over a BMI of this is to get prescribed. So it has to be over a BMI of 27 plus a comorbidity. So that could be high blood pressure or type 2 diabetes, or over a BMI of 30. Now, all the clients that we get that come to us on these drugs or that are interested in these drugs don't always fit those categorizations. But the reason why so many people are using this, why it's so popular, is because of the massive appetite suppressing effects that it has due to how GLP-1 interacts with the brain and essentially just shuts off appetite. So we can dive in a little bit more. Maybe, actually something I'd be really interested
I
in.
think that is true, but I think we have to always so look at how stressed as individuals we are.
Mhm.
And so, yes, the hunger does help, but remember, when that cortisol's cranking, that glucagon is up. And remember, these are lowering that glucagon. So we also get that sugar dumping to stop. So not only is it hunger that is helping, but a lot of these people are not in a good position in their lives or their lifestyle habits. So rather than doing all the work that we do as coaches of lifestyle, they can do an end around with the drug. I mean, let's be honest. They don't have to deal with it. They can pull their glucagon down and stop dumping carbs. And now something's just clearing it out. And so they're getting a leg up. So I don't like when coaches say, well, it's only to help their hunger. It's doing more than that, metabolically speaking, for a lot of these people who are high stress individuals that can't get anywhere. That's not to say you shouldn't deal with your lifestyle, but it is helping overcome that high stress that causes all that glucose dumping. So I think that's important to note.
Absolutely. No, I do agree with that. I almost see it as, and I'm going to be honest with you guys. I want us to all talk about this, but this is an opportunity for me to talk about a time that I've changed my mind, because as coaches, we see and we encounter different things. And this was something, I'll be honest with you, if you asked me a year ago about semaglutide, it was something that I really did think that the only individuals that should use it are who were clinically validated for. So I was initially, when this came out, I was only looking at it for type 2 diabetics. And that's initially what Ozempic was originally created for. And then we have to realize that our experiences, especially what we see with clients, develop some of our frameworks. So I was getting a lot of individuals who came to me and who had used the drug previously and then had come off for a period of time, had massively, went through a very large rebound and had rapidly regained the weight that they had lost. And so now I'm having people come to me in a worse position than they started off. They had lost muscle mass. They came to me now with a slower metabolic rate, lower total daily energy expenditure. They essentially went through what I would categorize as body decomposition, not body recomposition. So they actually lost muscle, gained body fat, went through this body fat overshoot.
I think we need to talk about why, because that's what's happening.
100%.
The media is reporting that. So someone is getting this from a salon. They're getting no nutrition guidance. They're getting no lifestyle guidance. They're taking this drug. And what it does, as we can go back to the hunger piece now, they're not hungry. They're not eating. So they're losing as much muscle as fat. And then they have no guidance coming off of it. They get to their goal. They come off the drug and they go back to their shitty American diet. Oh, and by the way, they never dealt with the stress. Glucagon spikes again. Sugar's back in the body. Here comes carbs because they weren't eating. Now they are, and they're back in the same spot. And oh, by the way, they lost more muscle. So now you're going to gain more fat than you have. So that's why we got to that position. These drugs should never, in my opinion, be handed out and used without a coach. That's my opinion. And in a coach's hands that knows how to use them, like myself, they're very potent, and I've got some crazy outcomes, and I get the people off of them, and we can talk about how I do that, and their body is not wrecked, and they do stay lean. So it's unfortunate what has happened with the use of these, to the point where I worry that they'll be pulled from the market because they're just handed out like freaking, candy, and it really should not be the case.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. So I'm kind of backcasting to where I was a year ago. And then I really started to looking at the underlying causes. Essentially what you're alluding to is that there's a lot of people that got on this drug and they didn't have the lifestyle habits in place to succeed long-term. They didn't have a healthy dietary pattern. They didn't consume nearly sufficient enough protein, especially when they got on this drug, and then their appetite was suppressed. A lot of people reported, I had a lot of clients that came to me after getting off the drug and they said, well, I had an aversion to like meat. And they didn't look at protein shakes or any type of thing to try to supplement that protein intake. And they weren't training in a productive and progressive manner to build or maintain tissue. Correct. So that's what I initially encountered. But now I have more clients that come to me already on the drug. And I've started to shift my opinion on it, on how to use the drug and how to really look at it almost like a kickstart to their fitness and their weight loss journeys, which helps them adhere to the calorie deficit that they need to lose weight and to help clear up some of the metabolic issues they're dealing with. But then my role as a coach is to help them dial in the habits, their behaviors, and their lifestyle throughout the process of using semaglutide. So really, it is, and you alluded to this, it is about utilizing proper nutritional principles, training principles to really bolster the effects of these drugs rather than relying on it. And that's one misconception where Jeff, in the beginning of this podcast, mentioned how Planet Fitness is losing memberships. And that is, honestly, that's something I see in the medical orthodoxy, where they'll promote that this is a replacement for diet and exercise. And that is something I don't agree with whatsoever.
Not at all. Not at all.
If you don't have the fundamental habits in place and you haven't built the habits and lifestyle that will help you succeed long-term, you're setting yourself up for failure with these drugs. However, if we're able to work alongside, an educated coach, you or someone that is interested in the drug, or you're utilizing the drug, and you come to someone like myself, Jeff, or Jason, and we put you on a progressive structured resistance training program, we help you eat a sufficient amount of protein. So I'll tell you personally how I approach clients that are in this position that are utilizing this drug. I'm helping them prioritize protein. I'm making sure they get their micros in, because that's another thing that when I run through some of my software, I see that a lot of these people, because of how little they're eating and how massively their appetite is suppressed, they have many micronutrient deficiencies. So I'm backfilling that with certain micronutrient dense foods, but also with supplementation. This is a case where I'm utilizing a lot of individual ingredients to be able to make up and fill in the gaps of what they're doing, so that they're not suffering from nutrient deficiencies due to how massively their appetite suppressed. And then another thing that I'm really looking to do is to encourage them not to eat as little as possible, because that is one thing I do see a lot of people within the mainstream. They're like, well, listen, you're not hungry, so you could fast for a couple of days, or you don't need to eat, or eat as little as possible. And that's a really deleterious message, because not only does that predispose someone towards massive lean mass loss. But also, that is not a sustainable lifestyle. When you get off this drug or you slowly taper off this drug, you're going to have to know how to eat. And if you haven't cemented habits where you've been eating sufficiently, regularly throughout the day and having specific meal times and a meal structure and a cadence and making sure you get, adequate protein intake and you're getting fruits and vegetables and hitting a sufficient fiber intake, not only are you suffering from more side effects on the drug itself, because that's a lot of people that are dealing with constipation and a lot of issues in terms of GI effects, but also you're predisposing yourself towards muscle loss and more weight regain after.
Yeah. All those things you stated are 100% exactly what I have seen and 100% agree with. There are other applications of the drug, and we can get into this when you guys want, but if you research it, it pushes autophagy big time. And we all know weight training is one of the best ways to push autophagy. And if the listeners don't know what that is, it's basically cell death of damaged cells to make way for new cells that have proper hormone receptors, mitochondria that know how to burn fat and use glucose. And so not only is it able to push out those damaged senescent cells. So if I have someone who's hyperinflamed, which basically causes the mitochondria then to overheat, I can use this drug to help get at that cellular inflammation. So it's big time in lowering inflammation, so much to the point that I've used this in autoimmunity cases, and you can no longer find the ANA titer. The doctors are like, how are you no longer having rheumatoid arthritis? Well, because I used semaglutide and got down to the cellular level. So there is more applications in this than just straight weight loss. A lot of times these people need weight loss, but there are way more uses of this drug that people are just not aware of. So that's when it drives me nuts when coaches are like, oh, it's just for hunger. I'm like, probably shouldn't discuss this because you don't know what you're talking about. And so there are a lot of applications done right with this drug that we can also open up on this podcast as well, if you want.
Absolutely. Let's if you don't mind, let's go into some of the benefits. Let's take an all-encompassing view. We can all share as like a roundtable of the benefits of semaglutide and what we see, what we utilize it for in practice, and we can just open this up. Jay, I'll let you start.
Okay. So as I already said, definitely pushes autophagy. So I'll push that one out there, and it lowers inflammation inside the body big time. So those are two big ones that people don't always think about. So I'll leave those two on the table and then let Jeff or yourself talk about a few other benefits.
Jeff, you want to take over?
Yeah, man. Actually, so on the way we actually talked about this, we have the benefits and so forth. I want to give on my end because the experience. Okay. So I think along with Jay, maybe, but I had come in contact with semaglutide around 2018, 19 by a few of my gym pop clients who were put on it. And I'll be honest with you, man, I saw a lot more benefit than I ever saw negative, because in the case of the few individuals, they were drinking like 2 liters of Coca-Cola a day. So when you dropped it to 1, they were starving. Do you know what I mean? And it helped kick off that part. It also helped with their unmanageable blood glucose. It also helped with just their self-esteem, and I think that's something that most people don't get. Usually when people are willing to try this drug, the self-esteem benefit, the potential outcome, as I've heard before, pain to possibility, right? People really want that, man. A lot of people sure want the fucking shortcut. Our industry is filled with that. Clean for a show, DMP now, we could go all over the place, right? But gym pop people are no different. When they really want it, they want it. And as a coach, try to encourage them. The best you could do is do it. But the benefits I've seen, the one that I want to say that I don't think most people think of it, is a return of self-esteem, a return of a little normalcy of who they really want to see looking back at them. And that's part of why I got into coaching. I didn't get into it to have a multi-million-dollar business or anything. I got into it because I genuinely like helping people out, because the gym really helped me, and so did nutrition. So I wanted to point that out as a benefit, because I don't think many people see it. You guys know all the ins and outs, and I know enough to be deadly with it, but I always tell coaches, the self-esteem's a big one with this drug. Most people really want to improve themselves that way.
Absolutely. Yeah, Jay, you hit on a lot of good ones. Obviously, I'm not going to overlook the fact that this is a potent weight loss drug. I mean, that is what it's clinically validated for. We look at probably the most extensive trial on it. It's a step 1 trial. It was 2.4 milligrams of semaglutide for 68 weeks. So that is a very long period of time. But
it was 2.4.
2.4 milligrams, yes, weekly
a week.
injection.
That's a
Once,
big dose.
it is. It's a massive, and
So
you
I
have
think
to
we
think
can
about it like
talk
this.
about dose too and way you can do these things, because I think the
100%.
medical community does it different than, say, my advanced vitality clinic does it with a coach. So like we started at 0.25 mgs.
That's my belief as well.
You know what I'm saying? And so we get a lot of benefit, and most of my clients never go above 1 mg.
Now, and I 100% agree with you on that. The issue here is that they're standardizing within the research. They're standardizing for a dose that they're going to prescribe. So a lot of times they start them off at around 1.2, then they hit them with 1.7. They do it's a slow, it's actually a short titration over 4 weeks. Then they get them up to what they validate as a clinically significant dose. So in the step 1 trial, that was, I want to say it was 2021 that they released this, because this was actually the trial that enabled semaglutide to become allowed or categorized as a weight loss drug. Because initially it was just, Ozempic was just for type 2 diabetes. This was the trial. What they saw was over 68 weeks, which is over a year, they lost a little under 15% of body weight. So when we really break that down, that's only about like 0.21% per week, but it was extended for so long that people lost a significant amount of weight. So it is a potent weight loss drug if used adequately with diet. Now, what a lot of people overlook is in these trials, they're utilizing it with diet and exercise interventions. A lot of people think you just throw this drug into the mix. That's what a lot of the medical community kind of makes it seem like. This is your replacement to diet and exercise. That's not how any of the trials are doing. The only issue with the trials, and I will say this, is that they don't utilize resistance training. So for instance, in that step 1 trial, they did a reanalysis of it after. So that trial was 68 weeks. Then they did a 52-week follow-up where they separated them out and randomized the individuals into groups. So they had lost on average 15% of body weight. What they did was they separated them out and they gave one half of the group, or one group, a placebo. And they gave the other half the continuous semaglutide for 52 more weeks. So 1 more year. What they found was that they regained the placebo group that was taken off semaglutide. They regained about 12% out of the 15% that they had lost. So over 70% of their body weight they regained. So there is a large predisposition towards weight regain if you don't continue with the lifestyle habits and all the other things. The other issue with that first step 1 trial is when they looked at the actual body composition outcomes, there's only 2 trials that have looked at this. We see precipitous losses in lean body mass. So for instance, there's 2 trials that have looked at this. The step 1 trial found, I believe, a 39% loss in lean mass, meaning out of all the weight that they lost, 39% of it was from the loss of lean mass.
Were they weight training in that study?
No, that's the issue. So here's the thing. So we have to do a comparative analysis. So the second trial that looked at it, I believe it's called the Sustain 8 trial. They found 40% of lean mass loss. So out of all the weight, so say that hypothetically someone loses 20 pounds, 40% of that, 8 pounds of that was from the loss of lean mass.
It's terrible. Your BMR is dropping. It's terrible.
100%. Now, the thing is that that's even more than we actually see in weight loss trials without resistance training. So the average, when we look at weight loss, just general weight loss trials where it's just due to a calorie deficit without exercise, without resistance training, and without high protein, it's about 25% loss. So we are seeing a much larger, it's a significantly greater decrease in lean body mass, which is why it's so important to resistance train, to prioritize protein, to get all these fundamental habits and this foundation built. But there's for every gimme, there's a gotcha, as I always say.
Well, and here's the thing too. Let's think about this. They're starting them at 1.2. That dose is going to knock your appetite to nothing, to the point that you don't even want food. I've watched it. I've lived with people on that dose. They don't even like coffee. You don't want food. It's interesting. Someone at 0.25, they can continue to eat, but it is starting to help the metabolic machinery. So these studies,
I agree with you in terms of dosing. I believe we should utilize the minimum effective dose and only titrate up when needed. So if this helps someone adhere to a very moderate deficit, so say 300 to 500 calories, where they're just able to sustain a deficit and try to block out some of the food noise that they're dealing with or the preoccupation and the food focus they have, I think that's the most conducive way. The majority of clients that I work with, the client that I have on the highest dose, and this is, now guys, when I talk about this, keep in mind that they're working with a healthcare facility or they're working with a clinic. This isn't me advising them, but there's a lot of times that they ask me for my input. I always tell them to start as low as possible, and most of the clinics do start at 0.25. So you guys are right in line with what your clinic's doing, Jay. And the other thing is the highest dose that I have someone on, or that someone is working with me and they're on, is 1.5. So I don't see people going up to 2.4. I think that would be extreme first and foremost. But we also have to realize, and this is something I see in practice as well, there's hyper responders and there's hypo responders. So there's on both gradients of the coin where there's some people that actually need a lot higher dose or they don't respond in the same way. So for instance,
but let me interject there, because
Mhm.
there is about 25% of women or users that will not respond to this drug. Now,
absolutely.
here's the thing. That's because their inflammation is so goddamn bad that it won't work. I get these people, I lower the inflammation, I work the lifestyle habits, and guess what? The drug works.
Yeah, so it's
we
not
can say that they're a hypo responder, but it's really that even this damn drug can't overcome their inflammation.
that's the thing. So I am trying to allude to the fact that this
Yeah.
is not a quick fix. This is not a one thing to solve all your problems. This needs to be worked with the lifestyle, and that's why I am really. And when this first came out, I was seeing this being really promoted as the replacement for a diet, exercise, for coaching. There was many people that said that.
Terrible.
Listen, coaches are going to be. It's going to be obsolete. And the thing is, you can never replace that human interaction, that guidance, and that mental and physical support that you give someone along their journey. But a lot of times, there are people that don't respond, that they take this drug and they don't have all the other things in play. They don't have a good they don't have, there's people, and I'm sure you guys have seen this because I've had many consultations that have come to me in this place where you go over there, they've been on semaglutide and they've lost not a clinically significant amount of weight. So we see in most of the trials 15% body weight loss. There's a lot of people that would be considered hypo responders, meaning they have a low response to it, where they're losing less than 5% of body weight, even on a high dose. So that's not, you could lose 5% of body weight in 5 weeks with most of the clients that we have at a 1% rate of loss, like just through regular dieting without this drug. And so there's people that come to you, and I'm sure you guys have seen this, where they're eating their same shit diet. They're just more suppressed in terms of their appetite. And so they're eating less. The portions are controlled, but they're still eating the hyperpalatable, highly processed foods with very little, that are nutrient devoid and have very little satiety value. And they're utilizing this drug just to be able to control their portions, not overeat. However, they're really not setting themselves up in a position to succeed both in the short term and then also in the long term.
Yeah, I mean, so what's going on is, at the level with those people, they are so stuck in sugar burning. For the audience, when you eat, an hour later, you should burn some ketones. That is a very flexibly metabolic metabolism. You can get a keto mojo and watch this. Even if you're eating carbs, by 1 hour, you should be around 0.3 and it should register. The people I'm finding who are worse responders, they'll be at low or 0.1, and it's just across the board, no matter what meal I put them at. Those people are going to have a very uphill battle. It's because of the cortisol. It's because of the glucagon. They're just dumping so much. You even throw them on keto, their body won't get into keto because of the stress now that that's causing. Mm-hmm. So you need this little bit of push metabolically that this drug can provide to let the body remember, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be able to burn some fat too along the lines. And this drug can do this really well by also, like I said, pushing out these cells that are damaged. And that's what's going on. So, that's why some of those people don't respond. It's because they're so far gone. They need a wider approach. Once I sit them down, I start tracking the ketones, I flush them out, I get the inflammation lower, and then we go back in and I feed them up first, and then maybe go into a keto with this drug. I can fix all those metabolic issues. And then as I reverse them out, they come back out and their body is metabolically flexible. But those are the people that are really still not responding well to this drug. And actually, I'm starting to get known that I can help this drug even work for people that just don't work. And it's because they just don't understand the full mechanism. So they aren't someone, in my opinion, that will never respond to it. They're just more quote unquote diseased than your average person. And they need more TLC.
100%. They're more resistant to the effects of this drug, and we see that in all aspects.
Sugar so long that their bodies just won't kick over.
And it could be other things that we couldn't even measure personally, like mitochondrial dysfunction. So I was just reading a paper a couple months ago. Actually, it was right after we all stayed in Tennessee at Jeff's house.
Yeah.
I was looking more into diet resistance. Jay, you and I personally, we had a lot of private conversations about this. I looked at the paper you sent me, and then I found a different paper that was actually on diet resistant individuals, looking at the 20% of what I'll refer to as hypo responders to diet interventions. This was a 900 calorie diet, and this was the lowest 20% of responders in women on that 900 calorie controlled diet that were not seeing the same weight loss effects. And actually what they saw was a high degree, it was multifaceted, a high degree of mitochondrial dysfunction. So they were actually, they actually couldn't go through aerobic metabolism. They couldn't burn fat for energy.
Exactly.
The other thing that they saw was lower, which is really interesting. It was very specific. They did cross-sectional area analysis. So they took muscle fiber biopsies, and they found that they had lower amounts of type 1 muscle fiber, meaning the slow twitch, which would be aerobic, would go through essentially oxidation of beta oxidation, so burning fat. They found lower rates of that and higher fat mass. So lower muscle mass, but specifically lower muscle mass of the slow twitch fibers that are what are used for aerobic, conditioning. And then also they found higher fat mass and a lower overall total daily energy expenditure and metabolic rate. So they were burning less calories. They were specifically burning less fat. And this is in women, where if we actually look at the physiology of women, they're more likely, their mitochondria actually burn through fatty acids better than men. But these were specific women that had mitochondrial and metabolic flexibility dysfunction. They were actually metabolically inflexible. So there's so many parameters that we can look at. And the actual, in the research study, they did a huge analysis. They looked at over 5,000 patients, I believe, and they pulled them down to the bottom 20% of responders who had responded at least to this very controlled diet intervention. What they did was they put them on a concurrent training program of combining both aerobic training and resistance training so that they could build muscle and then also specifically stimulate the type 1 muscle fibers. So they had them do endurance training, and they actually found a better response. They not only responded better than actually the non-diet resistant group, there was a diet responsive group and a diet resistant group. They found that it kind of offset a lot of the down regulations and some of the bottlenecks that they had. So there is so many aspects to coaching that we need to look through.
But think about that. That training that they introduced was pushing autophagy, and those cells,
100%.
as you said, were damaged at the mitochondrial level. And that's what I was talking about, where a lot of my clients, they're already training and it's not doing it. But you add semaglutide or tirzepatide, and they're known to push autophagy. Now you've got 2 + 2 is 4. These cells can get out of there, and you can bring in these cells that are metabolically flexible, that do burn fat after an hour after eating. So it's cool that your study was about the same as what I'm seeing and what I'm saying. It was about 20% non-responders, and you're looking at it, and we're saying kind of the same thing. You just went and found the research, was what I love about you. I did. I'm not much of a research guy. I do get on PubMed, but like Brandon will read it and synthesize it and then apply it. So it's always cool. And we had a ton of discussion. So it's cool that you found that study, but those are the people I'm talking about. And those are the ones that really benefit from this drug, because like I said, even if you put them on keto, their body still just doesn't remember. It doesn't, the ketones don't go up. And then you're like, what do you do? And so a lot of the times these types of drugs can jumpstart that and help that metabolism get back to being metabolically flexible.
Absolutely. No, I kind of look at it now, because now I'm in a different stage of my career. A year ago, I was not really for these drugs, and it wasn't that I looked at it judgmentally, but I just really just left it in the category of people that were actually a candidate for it. And now I look at it as this is another
myself more, right? I mean, you've dug in.
100%. And the other thing was, it's more, I see it as another adjunctive therapy. I see it as another tool in our toolbox. The issue that I still have to this day, and this is the issue I had initially, was that a lot of people think of this as a one quick solution or the one solution to their problems, and it's not. This is a multifaceted issue. Obesity, weight loss resistance, all these issues are multi-pronged and multifaceted, where we need to really dig in as practitioners and work with a client on their physiology, their psychology, their mindset, their habits, behaviors, all these, even their trauma. There's been many, I can't tell you how many clients that I've actually sent to go to a counselor to talk about their childhood trauma, because I've done this myself. And I know that my body's responded a lot better since I've been in therapy the last few years. And I'll tell you, there are so many things that we have to undig, and we have to, it's almost like being a detective. We are unraveling layers of the onion, essentially. And this is why I really want to get across to this audience. This could be an immensely beneficial. I see this almost like a life raft for someone. If you're drowning, this can really help you stay afloat, but it's not the thing that's going to get you onto dry land. We need to work on looking at prioritizing and really dialing in your nutrition, your training, your exercise, your stress management, your lifestyle. Even, like I said, I utilize a lot of, supplements and additive supplements, especially from like a micronutrient perspective, but even like mitochondrial health supplements. There's a lot of things to lower oxidative stress and things of that sort. So it's so multifaceted that it's not, I don't want anyone to get this impression. And I know us three understand this, but I really just want the audience to realize this is not, we're just throwing this in the mix and this is going to solve everything for you. We need to work the system. We need to, as you always say, Jay, this is your term. We need to work all the functions.
Yep, exactly. And so I love, the message. And if someone out here is just using that and they aren't doing the lifestyle, it's not too late. You can start dialing in now. You can start eating right. You can start looking at your stress. You can start incorporating exercise, because we will tell you, we have seen it time and time again. if you are not adopting these things and you come off this drug, you will have less muscle. That means you burn less calories at rest. As soon as you start eating that shitty diet again, you will gain it back and then some and be less effective because you have less muscle. So this is a tool, but it is something that should be, you should tread lightly and know what you're getting into and really seek out some help. I know with my clinic, we offer a dietitian, a registered dietitian for $150 a month to work with our people if they want it. If they're not with a coach already, we will provide that at that cost because we believe strongly in the drugs, but we believe strongly in guidance. So we are not just putting our people out there without any help if they don't have a coach. Very, very important.
100%.
At this moment, real quick, ladies and gentlemen,
absolutely.
be sure to pause, stop, share the podcast because you didn't know any of that shit. Just a minute. Go ahead, Brandon.
All right. So obviously we've talked about a lot of benefits, but for every gimme, there's a gotcha. So, and
Yep.
Jay, I know that
Yep.
we are very transparent. And I think the big thing about us as educators and leaders in this space is we need to cover both the pros and the cons.
Yep.
So
100%.
let's go through some of the side effects. And then also the biggest thing is here is practical application. So how do we minimize and how do we manage some of these side effects? So Jay, I'm gonna let you open up first. I'll fill in wherever and Jeff, you will as well.
So, you know, we've already kind of hit on it, so I won't beat a dead horse. But first and foremost, my people don't come to me and get put on this immediately. I work a process called the flush. Really, it's just an anti-inflammatory period. Call it what you want. I'm putting anti-inflammatory foods in their diet. I'm pulling back on training if they're overstressed. I'm trying to get cortisol down. I'm trying to already do the things that will help this tool work better. So once you get that in place, you know, that's great. And then they usually don't start with me till about a month or so in to getting everything in line. As far as like some of the things that, you know, we want to go on to negatives, right? Or things that you got to watch.
Some of the side effects of the drug, just comment.
Yeah.
I mean, I can even go through some of the stats and stuff of like the most common things that people are seeing.
But things I see.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that drives me nuts, doctors put someone on this with gut issues. If you come to me with gut issues, I'm going to run a GI map. I'm going to fix you first. GLP-1s, we just told you, it slows transit. That's how it helps with hunger. Food's going to sit. What do you think is going to happen if your food sits and you already have SIBO or dysbiosis?
It's going to get worse.
It's going to get worse and you're not going to be able to shit at all. Don't throw this drug on someone who has a bad gut. Please don't. It's going to make it worse. Number two, even if you have a great gut, it still may slow transit down. That's why the dose should be started slow. I've seen so many people get horrific gut issues or even gastroparesis from the 1.25 dosing. It's too fast, too much, in my opinion. You want to start slow so your body gets used to it and you can stall that. But we have seen people get gastroparesis from this. Another problem, hair loss. Now, why? Because they're not eating. It's not, if you're eating healthy, you're getting your micronutrients like Brandon said, generally speaking, I don't see it. But there are times it can happen, okay? So everyone needs to realize that it can happen. I've seen one case of pancreatitis happen. So that's also an issue and something to think about. Those probably are my biggest ones, but then there is nausea that can come with it. That is easy to thwart with something called Zofran. It's an anti-nausea med, very cheap. But I'll be honest with you, because semaglutide does seem to carry more of these sides, I love tirzepatide. It's GLP-1 with a GIP, has less side effects, a lot less gastrointestinal issues, but it is more expensive, probably double. So those are the main side effects that I see. The last one is dehydration. You got to stay dehydrated and you've got to keep on your salts and your electrolytes. Brandon, what else am I missing?
Yeah, so I'll tell you the most common thing I see, and now I've started to dig into this because this is not in any of the validated research. Now, mind you, we don't have that many trials on this. I see a lot of fatigue, lack of energy, and lethargia. And now we have to think there's multiple mechanisms at play here. So first and foremost, people drastically cut down their energy intake. So they're suffering from low energy availability. I have many clients that come to me, they're in a state, almost in a state of REDS, which is relative energy deficiency syndrome. So they are under fueling themselves. And it's having negative implications on all aspects of their life. There's many people that initially started this to lose some weight, to be able to train, to be able to get into the gym, to be able to become more active. But they're plopped out on their couch because they're so fatigued and so low energy. That is from a lack of nutrients, first and foremost. But I've also heard other doctors. So I'm going to give a shout out to Dr. Spencer Nadolski, who is an obesity specialist. And he actually has looked at very low doses. He's done this in his own clinic. He actually runs a clinic for Weight Watchers. I forget what it's called, but he runs this clinic that overlooks all the patients on Weight Watchers that utilize semaglutide and any GLP-1 receptor agonist. So he has thousands of patient files. And so what he's seen is even at very low doses of the drug, that there are some people that aren't losing weight. So it's just suppressing their appetite enough so that they're not in a massive surplus. So they're not overeating, because a lot of these people have binge eating disorder. They have overeating habits that are causing them to rapidly increase weight. So they're now staying weight stable. They're at maintenance calories. They're not in a deficit, but they're still suffering from fatigue and lack of energy. We don't know the mechanisms here. So it could cause nutrient deficiencies. It could cause nutrient depletion. There are many things that go into play. For instance, if you were to just eliminate carbohydrates in totality, Jay, you alluded to the fact that you need to stay hydrated. But also, if we actually look at ketosis, we see that there is a massive loss in electrolytes, because insulin is one of the regulatory hormones that helps with shuttling electrolytes such as sodium, and also glycogen is a form, as that molecule both is binded with both glucose and then water and electrolytes. So it's being held in the actual tissues. So there is this diuresis of ketosis that essentially happens where you excrete a ton of electrolytes. Now, if you're essentially going to ketosis, whether it's due to just cutting out your carbs completely or just not eating, entirely fasting, you could be suffering from really high levels of nutrient deficiencies as well as dehydration. So that's another thing that I see. Nausea, I actually see pretty commonly in terms of the clients that have come to me. They're dealing with gastric distress. They're dealing with nausea. Some of them get really like vomiting spells, especially in the first 1 to 2 days after injection. Now, keep in mind, semaglutide specifically is a once weekly injection. So the strength and potency is generally highest in the beginning, and then it kind of tapers off. You'll see if someone's on a very low dose, and I'm sure you guys see this yourselves, where towards the end, so say they shoot every Sunday. By Saturday night, going into Sunday, they start getting hungry, and they're seeing less of the side effects. So there is this tapering off effect. The other thing that I see, obviously, I've seen people come to me now. I haven't seen this under my watch or in like clients that I work with, because I'm prioritizing resistance training. I'm making sure that they dial in protein. Even if they don't have an appetite, I'm having them use meal replacement shakes, protein, whey isolate powder. Even if we're utilizing little replacements, even protein bars, honestly, because they're so low food volume that they can still get them down. I'm just trying to stimulate muscle protein synthesis and maintain that muscle tissue. But there are a lot of people that have sent me pictures that have come to me having utilized the drug in the past, and they've lost significant amounts of lean body mass. So that is a huge issue. And then the other symptom or side effect or condition that it could lead to is massive weight regain. We do see that, there is a clinical trial that sees that. And then I've also seen that also in my own practice, where someone hasn't worked with a coach, they've utilized this drug on their own, and then they've gotten off. And the thing is that I understand that a lot of times we talk about nutritional periodization, and we're talking about in the context of not using pharmacology, but it's very similar to like a contest prep, where we would take out some of the drugs, put someone on, say, like a testosterone replacement. We're pulling things out, but keeping them at a baseline where they're at a homeostatic baseline point, where they're in a physiological range, but they're still maintaining their natural physiological hormones. So in the case of testosterone replacement, we're keeping someone in the natural physiological range of testosterone. We're not bottoming them out. We're not pulling the drug out completely. The same thing, I believe personally, is that we have to titrate off the dose in terms of the actual semaglutide use, and then also we have to titrate up the food. So there needs to be this pairing between the drug use and then also the dietary adjustments that are made. And I find this to be a really good method, where a really good place where reverse dieting works, where we're able to slowly increase food. Also, I'm really working on helping with their nutritional habits, because a lot of times people have, and they come to me in this situation where they're just eating less of the nutrient poor foods that they're eating. This is where I'm really dialing their habits while they're on it, their appetite suppressed. I'm really getting them into a whole foods based diet, very high satiety index foods, making sure that they're replete in micronutrients, and then slowly increasing the portions of those high volume, high satiety foods as we back down the dose of the drug.
Yeah. So, I agree with 100%. I kind of titrate it backwards the same way I titrated it up. Every 3 to 4 weeks, they lose 10 units and it drops. As that's going on, I'm upping food slowly, usually in the form of carbohydrates. A lot of times for these people, though, I will keep keto days in the diet. Maybe they're non-training days. They may even do like an 18-hour fast in the middle of the week to keep blood sugars clear, to keep pushing autophagy a bit. This is to get them off the drug, because a lot of them want to maintain. And so if they go right back to carbs every single day, I find that a lot of times it will slowly creep up. You've got to build a plan for them to help meet them where their metabolic machinery is. But you have to take into consideration that because they were dieting and their calories were low, things like SHBG are going to be up, and that's going to bind to their androgens. And we know if you refeed with androgens bound up, you're going to put on more body fat. So you've got to counter that as a coach. Now you can use boron, that'll help. And as you feed up, stress is going to come down. but I take a different approach that people may not like, and they don't have to use it, but it works with great clients. I use 2.5 mgs of Anavar for anyone who will do it. So as they're dieting food back up, I've got VAR in, they're building muscle at a rapid rate, their BMR's coming up, their metabolic machinery is coming up, the dose is coming down. Now, if I get them to 10 units, sometimes people stay on that. And then what I do is I'll do 6 weeks of semaglutide, 6 weeks of metformin, 6 weeks of semaglutide, then maybe 6 weeks of GA Max Pro. This way they don't get used to any of the insulin mimetics or, you know, any of the products, because no matter what you take, your body's going to get used to it. That's why GLP-1s were developed, because metformin was no longer doing the job. Mm-hmm. So I keep that in mind, that you can't stay on it forever because you will start to fade, especially at the low doses. I have people that want to come off. And sometimes I use metformin, or sometimes I'm saying, hey, you're going to need some keto days. You might need a little bit of fasting to maintain where you're at. But you can get off if you want, but you probably not going to pound carbs every single day and maintain every bit of the fat loss. But I've been very successful with strategies in that realm of getting people back off the drug or down to 10 units with their new body, and extremely happy that they're down still 30, 40 pounds. So those are
I've been helping a few, it's specifically women. I find I encounter personally more women that come to me on this drug already utilizing 100%. It. And most of them have wanted to get off, because there was a large expense included on it. And then secondarily, some of them were feeling some side effects and things of that sort that they were unfavorable, the nausea. That is something that I would utilize. Like you mentioned a drug that you can utilize. There's also ginger root that's pretty effective at decreasing nausea. Some had like massive constipation where they were constantly bound up. So obviously I'm doing the natural things like increasing fluid intake, fiber, Metamucil, things of that sort. But there's certain drawbacks, especially from a financial perspective, that people don't want to be reliant on this drug. So I've slow rolled them, but I also make it very clear. And I'm going to let you guys chime in your own opinions, but a lot of people have been on this drug for an extended period of time. They've slowly titrated up. I really do suggest, and I say this to all my clients, listen, just the way that you slow it, and Jay, you alluded to this, just like you slowly titrate this up, and we're on this for an extended period of time, it's going to take a long time to get off. So it's not that we just pull the drug out completely, or we're going to reverse diet you very quickly. This is not the same thing as metabolic adaptation. This is a very strong physiological mechanism that it's pharmaceutically suppressing your appetite. So we need to get yourself in a position to succeed. We can't just pull the rug out from under you and have you fall on your ass. So it is a slow roll process. It is being patient. It also is really focusing. A lot of people that I encounter that were on this drug, they came to me already on this, they have never really prioritized resistance training. They've worked out, but they've never really trained. So this is where I'm looking to essentially recomp them while I'm pulling the drug out, or we're decreasing the drug dose essentially, and I'm increasing food. I'm really trying to fuel them adequately for training, get them to build some muscle, build metabolic capacity within that, and really have more metabolic restoration and resilience. Because what I've seen personally with people that have been on this for an extended period of time that have come to me, and I'm getting their first lab work, say within the first couple of weeks that I work with them, there are a lot of down regulations in sex hormones. So I'm seeing low thyroid, I'm seeing low progesterone, low estradiol. Now, we can't say this is just because of the drug. It's because of a state of being a very low energy availability for an extended period of time. So it's essentially like extreme metabolic adaptation, more than most of them would have ever been able to sustain, because most people cannot eat at this low amount of calories for an extended period of time that they can on these drugs.
Correct. Yep. So that's why, like I said, I bring in some sort of anabolic. I've used abolic. From True Nutrition. I've used different things. But I find, and I've done it without. Some people say they don't want to, and then I throw in some boron and maybe some stinging nettle root and get that SHBG down as much as I can, and then start a very slow reverse. But on the reverse, you've got to be cognizant of the fact, as Brandon said, hormones are down. And so what do you think is going to happen when you refeed? Do you think you're going to build more muscle? Probably not. So as a coach, you got to understand where they're at and what can you do to put in place to help them kind of sway that back over to building muscle to get them out of the hole.
Awesome. All right, I want to turn this over. We had a couple audience Q&As that I received last week when I posted this. There was a lot of excitement about having you on, Jay. So just like Jeff and I were excited, the audience was as well. So I'm going to throw the first one out there for any of us three to answer. Sure. First one was, does semaglutide have any metabolic effects outside of just making someone eat less? So they're talking about, does it increase thermogenesis? Does it increase metabolism? Any of those aspects?
Well, I think we hit on that, right? I mean, it's definitely lowering glucagon, allowing you to stop pulling in the glucose into the bloodstream with that spike in insulin. But is it actually creating more thermogenesis? Not that I'm aware of. But it is improving your metabolic machinery and how things work. And we know that basically a lot of disease comes from chinks in the armor to your metabolic machinery first and foremost. High insulin resistance, that will start more metabolic or more disease than really almost anything. You know, and there's usually a stress component with it. So in that way, yes, because it is making you more efficient, but it is not directly spiking, you know, thyroid hormone or anything in that way that I am aware of. And actually for females, they need to be cognizant. It can push estrogen up while you're on it. So anyone who has endometriosis or has estrogen-driven cancers maybe in their family may do well to take something like our Estracort. I put them on it while they're on it. I even had one female whose estrogen went up into the 400s on it. So we did use a little ADEX, 0.25 mgs, 1 to 2 times a week, just while she was on it to control that. It's not common, and some women won't even feel it, but some women will. And so I want to point that out, that it doesn't drive all sex hormones down, although I'm kind of going on a tangent now, but I'm not aware of any direct thermogenesis from it.
Yeah. So, Jay, before I conclude that answer and give my own take to it, do you believe that the accumulation of excess estrogen is due to the downregulation detoxification pathway? So, for instance, if someone is chronically constipated on this drug, they're not able to actually excrete that excess estrogen, or is that what you're kind of seeing in practice?
It very well could be that, because as we know, estrogen, you know, has to leave the body through the liver, and there's phase 3 in the gut, and, you know, we got our beta glucuronidases and all those things. And so, yes, I think I have not dived into it, but you probably will go read about it. And there's probably some connection between the beta glucuronidase and the GLP-1s that are causing that reabsorption of estrogen. I just know that it's happening, and I know how to thwart it. So I take my steps, but I've never delved into it, but I would be curious if that's what it is.
Interesting. I'll definitely have to dig in,
Let
see if
me
I can find
know.
anything. You know, I'm a
Let me know
curious
in a
person.
week.
I will. So, from this perspective, does it have any metabolic effects? This person specifically asked about thermogenesis or increases in energy expenditure. And I think what we have to realize is, although semaglutide is really linked to fat loss, it is not a fat loss agent or not a fat loss drug. It's actually an anti-diabetes medication. Really, the main mechanism of action is through the brain. So it is mostly an appetite suppressant, and it helps with increasing fullness. So it's not going to help you burn fat technically. It isn't going to raise your metabolic rate. It's not going to increase total daily energy expenditure. Actually, if you actually look in the trials, it actually lowers energy expenditure through the loss of lean mass. But if you're someone that's resistance training, you're prioritizing maintaining muscle, you're keeping high protein intake, you're going to be able to maintain more or less your metabolic rate. But it doesn't work like a stimulant. It's not going to work in the same mechanism as something like Clen does, or any of the central nervous stimulants that many use during a fat loss phase. So it's not going to work like ephedrine. It's not going to work on your beta 2 adrenergic receptors. None of those things. It works on a completely different pathway just through the brain. So there aren't any metabolic effects towards your total daily energy expenditure. Now, Jay did hit on, and this is 100% true, from a metabolic health perspective, it has many benefits. So we're seeing increases in insulin sensitivity and decreases in insulin resistance. This puts many people into remission with type 2 diabetes. It also helps with cardiovascular disease markers. So we're seeing improvements in lipids, we're seeing improvements in total cholesterol. It has profound effects from a cardiovascular perspective. And then from an inflammatory perspective, it has many downstream effects. So let's think about it like this. This is a drug that can help massively with weight and fat loss. Now, fat is already an inflammatory tissue. Fat releases adipokines, which are inflammatory cytokines, which increase IL-6 and all these, tumor necrosis factor alpha, all these different, interleukins and these different inflammatory signaling pathways. And so by bringing down body fat, you're already decreasing inflammation. You're going to see, I've seen many clients where their IL-6 is lowered, their CRP is lowered. There's many inflammatory markers that are significantly lower while they're on this drug. So it's going to help from a metabolic health perspective, but not a metabolism perspective. So it's two different entities that we're looking at.
That's correct. Yep.
Jeff, did you have anything, my friend?
No, I think what I'm going to say, I'm going to hold towards the end to summarize something.
Okay, so we have one last question, and then we'll do a wrap up. The last question was, are there any natural ways to increase GLP-1?
I kind of alluded to that. You can take some Akkermansia. It increases P96. It's a protein, which then stimulates GLP-1. And I'll be honest with you, I'm seeing more and more GI maps with almost no Akkermansia. My fiance actually had none, and she was always hungry as hell. And she had some other gastrointestinal issues, is why we ran it. And now I have her on Akkermansia. Her hunger seems to be much more regulated. And so Akkermansia can be taken and will stimulate GLP-1. I'm not sure if there's anything else, but I'm sure Brandon probably knows if there is, but that one comes to my forefront.
Yeah. So when we look at, so obviously I've studied this in depth from an endogenous perspective. So just, I really was interested in this years ago with appetite management. So I went through all the appetite and satiety hormones before and what influences each one. And so with GLP-1, this is naturally and endogenously produced, and we can increase our natural production of it because it does happen just through the ingestion of nutrients. So we get it just from eating foods. Now, I want to keep in mind and give a caveat out there. This is not going to be to the same degree as GLP-1 drugs, but there's interventions that have shown to increase GLP-1 production and lead to greater fat loss and metabolic health outcomes. So the first and foremost, the easiest way to significantly increase GLP-1 production is to go on a high protein diet. There's several studies that have looked at calorie equated diets or calorie equated meals, looking at high protein intake versus say a high carbohydrate intake, and we see much significant or much greater increases in GLP-1 with a high protein intake. So there's actually a great study that I always allude to. It's I believe a 2006 study, and essentially what they looked at was a calorie matched breakfast of a high protein breakfast versus a high carb breakfast. And they found with the high protein breakfast, despite calories being equated and the people coming in fasted into lab, they found greater increases in GLP-1 levels and also a significantly greater decrease in post-meal ghrelin secretion. So that means we had an increase in one of your main satiety hormones and a decrease in one of your main hunger hormones. So that would be like, if you guys are looking at how to naturally suppress GLP-1, that would be the first thing. The other thing that, and this is actually just a hunger hack that I've utilized with clients for many years, is utilizing decaf coffee. Now that helps with appetite suppression in and of itself, but we actually see that there's studies that show that drinking decaf coffee, and I believe it's due to like the chlorogenic acid in it. So you could actually utilize this with actually green coffee bean extract and things of that sort. But we see that specifically decaf coffee increases GLP-1 levels. And then the other thing that's actually a very popular supplement is the supplement berberine. Berberine has been shown to increase GLP-1 production. Now, this doesn't really work on the appetite suppression ends of things, but if you actually look at the research on berberine, it's been shown to have almost equivalent outcomes to the main type 2 diabetes medication, which is metformin. And that has actually been shown one of the mechanisms in which it works. It does activate AMPK signaling. But the other way that it works is it actually increases GLP-1 secretion and levels, and that actually helps it to lower glucose and lower insulin secretion. So these are kind of the mechanisms that berberine is working on. So this could be berberine hydrochloride. It also has, and this also ties in kind of like with the bacteria in the gut that Jason was alluding to, is that it also helps. It has GI benefits from an antimicrobial perspective. So there's many benefits. Now, these, like I said, these aren't going to be the same as utilizing a GLP-1 drug. I know, Jay, I believe that you're coming out with a supplement. I don't know if it's out yet, so I don't want to ruin anything, but there is something that you guys are working on to help with
Our
natural
TJ Maxx
GLP-1.
Pro, we put 4 different ingredients in there that actually stimulate GLP-1 to cause that same insulin burst when you eat, as to mimic semaglutide for our clients that don't want to use it, but we still need to get that clearing. So GA Max Pro does it.
Perfect. Yeah. So there are, for you guys out there that don't want to use this drug, this, like we've tried to cover the pros, the cons, the advantages, the disadvantages. This isn't for everyone. And we're telling you objectively and honestly, we don't use this with all our clients. This is very specific use cases, but there are some other alternatives that you guys can utilize just to get the benefits of increasing GLP-1 secretion and just helping with the appetite suppressing effects, as well as the metabolic benefits from an insulin sensitivity perspective.
And I would add, like, a higher fiber diet keeps you fuller, right?
Absolutely.
But it also creates butyrate when it mixes with our microbiome, and butyrate is one that helps stimulate GLP-1. So
absolutely,
that is what protein does as well. You're going to produce more butyrate, and so all that is going to stimulate GLP-1. So that's kind of how the protein works as well. But I think we all know that it does create more satiety, but that's kind of the reason why, is it hits the microbiome and butyrate's created from that. So I don't think I have any others. Fiber, protein, our product works. It's got ginseng in it. There's a few others I'm blanking on it right now, but you already covered berberine, that does it. And then there was 2 others we added that we researched and worked. So you can try our GI Max Pro if you want instead of semaglutide.
Absolutely. Jeff, do you have any other questions, my man? I'm going to turn it over to you.
No, I think I just wanted to kind of summarize this, that, owning a gym, I see a lot of people and they're from all walks of life. So if you're a coach and you're listening to this, when the client comes to you, don't fucking judge them. Stop putting out social media content, trashing the use of the drug. it's going
Correct.
to hurt your business. Okay. These people generally want help. Being a coach is called being a leader. And sometimes you got to like step your lean down, look on them and be like, hey, I'm gonna give you a hand. I'm gonna help you up, dust them off. They don't know. And what they don't know, that's your fucking job to teach them. So help them. And then secondly, if you're listening to this and you're a Gen Pop person and you didn't know any of this, don't feel bad at all. A lot of people don't know any of this. So hopefully this
Correct.
advice helps. The three of us are pretty capable of helping with this stuff, depending upon who you likes personality wise. Feel free to hit us up. We don't mind. With that being said, I just wanted to say, we're entering an age where everyone it's who can be the most like loud. And I'm always like, it doesn't need to be loud. It needs to be helpful.
Correct.
And I think that that's what, is the biggest thing to remember when you're dealing with this, because it's a hot topic. It's like HRT, it's like everything else. But guess what? These people are just like competitive athletes. Okay. Just like we like TRT plus and HGH and all these like fun little things. Don't fucking shame the lady because she needs semaglutide and a little Anavar. Who gives a shit? Help her
I
be
mean,
her best version of
look
herself,
at our
just
industry.
like you
Like
are.
we use Clen, we use GH, we use PEDs. Like
I
now
know.
where cheating draws the line. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, come
Yeah,
on.
that's what I'm saying. I think it's, where, this one's going to be looked at in 5 years. We're going to know what this drug really, the outcomes with it in terms of the people who are using it in the ways they're not supposed to.
I'm
So,
telling you right now, sorry to cut you off, but
sure.
I'm with tirzepatide to see what uses there are in bodybuilding. Low doses, how you can use it, coming off big pushes of 800 carbs. How quickly can I resensitize you? Do you lose muscle? Can I get you right back to a growing phase like that? I'm playing with it. And I think these drugs will play a huge role. And I don't have a problem playing with it and see what goes on. And I think it'll keep guys a lot healthier if they would open up their eyes and to other things. I mean, fuck, you're already putting all kinds of shit in your body. You won't put something in your body that's going to actually resensitize you and lower inflammation and improve your cholesterol.
I
Seriously.
agree.
Sorry, man.
So, yeah, no, dude, you're totally cool. I just want people to, you know, um, I think when I read that thing from Planet Fitness where I saw they flatlined and I saw they thought it was due to Ozempic, and it really put it together for me, like we're at a pivotal point where we as coaches are looking to help people, and that requires a funnel of people. So if these people are on it, go help them. They probably actually really need your help. And I still stand by, if you want to build your business, walk through your grocery stores on the weekend. There's a lot of people who are probably on that drug who don't know shit that they need to buy, and you could go have good conversations. So, with that being said, those are my thoughts to wrap this up. If you guys really like this, please share, like, comment, leave us a review. We're going to give away a couple tickets for the seminar next year for the reviews. I know Jay and I do it on ATG. Me and B are doing it for Chasing Clarity. We're probably going to put our podcast together and do like a special event for the listeners. Maybe have like a cool thing we might do Friday ahead of it. Maybe that Friday morning, because we come in town, we're bumping and grinding the moment we land, and probably Thursday afternoon. So, with that being said, Jay, we really appreciate you taking the time to join us to give a different lens at a topic that is only going to become more wildly popular to talk about as the year goes on. So, with that being said, coaches, let's stay classless, not inflame, and let's get out there and educate and keep doing the great work we're doing. That's what we do with Chasing Clarity. B, I'll toss it to you to round this motherfucker up since you've been doing it lately.
Absolutely, my man. Well, Jay, first and foremost, thank you so much for coming on. You know how much I enjoy our conversations. We usually have these privately, but today we
do,
get this
yeah.
all out and we're able to
Yep.
commence this and really get the audience to be able to listen to three individuals essentially bouncing ideas off of each other. And this is how we grow. And this is also an opportunity for me, especially with this topic. Jeff came to me with it. And I'm like, Jeff, like a year and a half ago when we first started talking about this, I was kind of like because I'm more of a conservative individual. I do focus heavily on the research, but there's things that come onto my lap as a coach. There's situations that get presented at my metaphorical door, which is essentially my email. And I'm like, listen, I'm not going to turn down the opportunity to help someone. So for those out there that are very against this drug and maybe look at this judgmentally, that's not really how I was looking at it, but I am kind of like a black or white mentality sometimes where I really look at things from like a clinical perspective. And that's just my upbringing. My aunt was a dean at a medical school, and I kind of got raised in that type of upbringing. However, I would really suggest, whether you're a coach, whether you're a client, whether you're a professional, whatever it may be, or you're just someone in your life is really struggling, whether it be with obesity, with metabolic disease, with metabolic syndrome, don't judge upon them for the decisions that they may be making or even considering. we have so many opportunities, especially as fitness professionals, to help all different types of people. And we should be looking to take our intelligence, our experience, and our expertise and leveraging that to help anyone in any decision. I always say this, and this is often a conversation I have with many of my clients about hormone replacement. That is never my decision. I could tell you what the labs read. I could tell you what my suggestions, my guidance is. The ultimate decision is always up to you, but I will always be here to guide you to the best of my ability. And that's really how we should look at all these topics, whether it be hormone replacement therapy, menopause replacement therapy, semaglutide, any of these GLP-1 drugs. We're here to really help someone get to become a better version of themselves. So I appreciate the opportunity to be able to open up on this topic with professionals like Jeff and with Jason. And Jason, yet again, thank you so much for coming on, my man. I'm looking forward to our next episode.
Yes, I agree. Thank you,
Take
guys.
care.
I appreciate
Yeah, no, dude, it was always damn blast to have you on here. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad to be back in the captain's seat helping Brandon along. I'm sure Jay's going to be joining us for some more podcasts down the road as we
it.
kind of go into season 3, getting a little bit more spicy. So, B, see you next week. Jay, I'm sure I'll see you soon, bro. Later,
Peace.
everyone.